Well, if we got all of our technical difficulties figured out, Howie, Chaney, are you with me?
I'm here, man. How's it going?
Oh, well, I want to apologize to everybody. I had a little work situation. We're running about 30 minutes late. But if you see to the right, that ugly fellow over there on the right, that is Mr. Phil Harris, one of our oldest friends. Phil, welcome aboard to Off the Record.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Hey, it's taken me years to look like this, and and incidentally, I guess you could say I have the voice for radio,
Yeah, everybody sees.
not the looks for the television.
Hey, welcome to the club. That's why we do this.
Okay.
I got a haircut. That's all I'm gonna say. Well,
Hey, you
everybody,
look better. Hey, you don't look like Grizzly Adams. I'll have to say.
People at work says it's not working with Bigfoot anymore. And Coach Van, I did this for y'all, you clean cut youngsters up in Sylvania. But I want to go through what we're going to do today. Howie, of course, was just to give you a little history. How long we've been doing radio together. Phil and I started. Howie was a junior or senior at Sylvania, still playing basketball. And I can remember me and Phil going to watch Howie play in the old Sylvania gym. Phil, do you have any recollection of the skinny-legged kid playing for Sylvania?
No, I mean, I know several Sylvania players that come through, but he's one of those that probably kind of sort of blended in. And at the time, I didn't know who Howie was as far as seeing him play. But I went to many Sylvania games and broadcast several from that old gym.
Yeah, it was an experience at the old gym. We'll get into that in a little bit, I'm sure. Howie, what is your first memory of Phil in the broadcast game?
I remember that. I think it was my senior year. It's the first time I remember seeing anybody at the gym broadcasting a ball game. And at the time, Principal Mr. Carlisle said, "Hey, we brought the radio group in to do your game tonight." I'm like, "Why?" And he said, "Just because." And find out it was Phil and Leroy. And so that's the first time I remember them being there and doing a game. And then at the halftime of the girls' game, they had me to go on the radio and talk because Mr. Carlisle knew that was something I wanted to do, for a long time. So Leroy got me on there and we talked for a few minutes. And I think Phil hit the concession stand or something like that. And then he came back and then they did my game. And then that's the first time I remember meeting the Phil Harris.
Yeah. Well, the thing, Leroy was a great interviewer. He had a lot of times he always had guests lined up and he asked great questions. I mean, he had some good interviews over the years.
So that's where we're going to start. Phil and I both WFPA 870 AM. I won't know what 870. What was it? It's 1050 or something.
1400.
1400. One year before Phil, I just bugged Leroy until he put me on the air. Phil came the next year, but we worked with Leroy Stancil. Phil, he was one of those old school radio guys. We probably had to fill in a lot of the football, but he had a good radio voice, and that was his stick, was sports radio and doing that football, every football and basketball on WFPA.
Yeah, definitely. So, and he was a great people person. I mean, he didn't meet a stranger anywhere, and people just loved him. I mean, he was one of a kind, and he's one of those that you miss. And and he helped me get started naturally. I talked to him one time. He goes, "Now, Phil, I can't pay you anything." I said, "I don't care. I just want the experience." And the first year I started doing games was back when Heather Mays was playing at Fife, and I think it was her sophomore year. Was actually the first year I started doing radio.
Yeah, we just had Coach Powell on, and I made it through the whole interview without calling her Heather Mays, and I was so proud of myself. So, Coach Powell, we got you coming back. So, Phil, let me tell you a little backstory. Phil worked at Winn-Dixie. I worked at the Radio Shack back in those days, and Phil and I had become connected through a love of college football. We both root for the same team. We won't have to get into it here, but we believe the same colors. Phil had contacted Leroy, and I'd been doing color with Leroy on his games of the week. And then Phil came, and Leroy said, "Hey, this other guy is going to do color, and you're going to go to sidelines." So I got my feelings hurt and went to the sideline. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to our broadcast, Phil, was you taking over color and me going to the sidelines.
Well, as one thing, you made some things interesting going to the sidelines, especially when you got up in the stands with the cheerleaders at Sylvania one night. That was hilarious, but it was great because you made them do a cheer on air, and even Leroy ate that up. He just loved it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was kind of, I think that's where this interviewing love for the show comes from. But Phil, when you started, you had an ability to do sports and understand what sports was about. Were you a fan of sports radio before you got into sports radio?
Oh Lord, yes. I knew when I was about 9 years old, listening to John Ward, that's what I wanted to do. And I even made tape recordings. I called games on TV back then. I just knew at some capacity I wanted to be in radio. I just loved it.
Yeah, and when Phil showed up, Howie, Phil was polished and good and made me and Leroy look bad. So I figured out real fast that I had to be all the personality of the show. So I'm still the personality of the show. But Howie, do you remember Phil? I mean, Phil showed up day one and was just good on the air.
Yeah, he really was. And Phil, let me ask you a question. I remember there was an article about you in the paper around here back several years ago, and I meant to look for it, but I haven't had time. But you kind of honed your craft in during one summer when you had broke a leg or ankle or something like that. I think the article said, and you went to local park and watched the kids play basketball, and you kind of broadcast it to everybody that's standing around.
Yeah, when what really got me in radio, I broke my ankle, had a lot of free time, and I got thinking, if I'm ever going to do this, I got to do something now. And that's when I went and talked to Leroy, and next thing you know, it just materialized. It's one of those things. If you want something bad enough, you'll make it happen.
Yeah. Well, and Phil, over the years, how he has coached me incredibly a lot. Now, of course, I'm the voice of the Squatch County football, but I'll call Phil and go, "Phil, I'm struggling with this aspect of the game. How can I get better?" Have you ever done that with Phil? You ever ask his advice? Because I did a lot, especially still to this day.
The one thing that Phil does that I never could get the hang of when we would do basketball games, about 2 possessions into the game, he knew what player was wearing what number.
Yes.
And it was good. It was done. Here I am. I'm having to look for the names and the numbers and the programs or on the stat monitor, and Phil's like, "Hey, it's so and so. So and so for 5, so and so for section, so and so for Plainview." And I mean, like less than 2 minutes into the game, he knew whatever number was, and he had never saw him play earlier that season. Most of the games that we did was down in Jacksonville, and with his work and my work, wasn't able to do a lot of them. We did hit a few of the area tournament games, but when it came to Jacksonville, it's just like Phil just shows up and he's ready to go. There's no studying of the games, the tapes, and all like that. He just knows what's going on.
Phil, what do you think when you're retired from play-by-play in football? We've talked about doing some basketball again. I think basketball is really your passion, play-by-play wise.
Yeah, I think the main reason is mentally, it's very fast. You've got to keep up, keep it basic, but it's real challenging mentally. And I think that's what I enjoy about the broadcast part of it, because it keeps you sharp. And and your job is to tell a story. And somehow, some way, of course, it's a God-gift talent, I think, I don't know the X's and O's of basketball. Like Howie would quiz me to death on the X's and O's of basketball because I know nothing about it. That's right. When he worked with me, he knew the X's and O's, like what defense they were in and why they were running that defense. Well, I have no clue. I just understand kind of the flow of the game. And I guess basically that's great for play-by-play guy because you don't get too technical.
I remember when I first started doing games with you, and then as I went back in 7 or 8 years ago, I was at South Pittsburgh, then quit for a long time, and I went back to Squatcha County. I called you one night, and you said basically just remember to give the down, the distance, the score, and where the football is. And I did a game that night, Phil. And I went to the radio station the next Monday to pick up the tape. And the guy that was behind the counter said, "Here, we made you a tape of the game. You'll never wonder what the score is because you gave it every other play."
Yeah.
So,
And that's
I
great.
said it's
Yeah.
the Phil Harris method.
Hey,
Well,
listen,
go ahead, Howard.
Yeah, you can listen to games these days and listen for 5 minutes and never know what the score is or who's winning.
You don't know how aggravated I get because I listen to a lot of games on my way to the radio station to kind of get an understanding of what's going on in each game. So I have a little bit to talk about. That's my research. That's the way I do things. And they won't tell the score, and I get so angry. That's what I told. I said, the biggest thing is, Randy, I said, tell down distance, score, and the time. And I said, keep it basic, because then the game will slow down for you, and then you can add those things, add your personality in. But that's the main things that people wants to hear. A lot of them aren't listening to the whole broadcast. They just want to know what's going on in a short period of time.
Yeah, and recap the game. That's the things that Phil told me.
Yeah,
Phil, speaking
always.
of that, and Howie, you too, we'll throw this out together. Phil, you stayed on that DeKalb County Game of the Week forever. But you and I did it at one point after Leroy left. You and I started doing games together. One of the best memories. Me and you. I don't know if it's the best memory, but the Key Country van broke down on us one night on our way over to West Alabama, and boy, I think we got on the air 2 minutes before the kickoff, or we got on as the ball was kicked in the air.
Yeah, it was. We were on. I think it's either the East or West Limestone when we went over. Was it Sylvania that played over there? And yeah, we just barely got on the air in time. But or actually, Ron had to come pick us up, get us to there, and they went 8 over in Florence, and then came back and got us when the game was over with. But it was probably, with everything going, it may have been one of the better broadcasts we did. Who knows? I don't remember. But yeah, it was a challenge. But that's the kind of stories that makes it fun.
There was one.
I remember the guy from East Limestone. I asked him where the press box was, and he goes, somebody's late. And all he said. Go ahead, Howie.
I remember one night me and Phil travels up to Higdon to do a basketball game, North Sun Mountain, and Ida, I think it was, an area tournament or something to that effect. And we get up there, and nobody went up there in advance to find out if the cell service would work in the gym. And when we got there, no cell service. And we tried to go live. It wouldn't happen. I looked at Phil and said, "What are we going to do?" He said, "Well, I want to sit here and enjoy the game. I don't know what you're going to do." We didn't broadcast that night at all. And Phil looked at me after the game and said, "This is one of the best games I've enjoyed because I wasn't worried about nothing. I just watched the game."
Yeah. As many times I went to Skyline and we had to run this antenna outside where the louver, where you have the air vent and fans, where you'd have to run the cell phone antenna out that louver and stick it on the outside so you could get some cell service.
Do you all remember the old Marty system we used to use at WFTA?
Oh, yes.
It was some old broadcast system. When we plugged it in and turned it on, the lights in the gym would come down. It would blinker. It would start. And Leroy would be like, "All right, we're 57 miles from the station, but I think we can get there." And and we would. DAR. We used that Marty system for DAR one night. And I'm like, well, we couldn't get a military signal out here. And he put that thing in, the lights went down on the gym. And here it goes, and we're live on air. So what was that, Phil? Do you even know what it was?
The Marty?
Yeah.
Well, it was that gum. It's like just like an oversized, basically antenna. And can you hear me now? I've changed over to the computer. Can you hear and see me?
Yeah, I can hear and see you. I just can't see you there. Keep moving to the left. There you go. Now you're in frame. Good.
All right. Well, I was just trying to do something. We couldn't get to come up on my computer, so I'm having to do it on the cell phone. But yeah, that old Marty system. I know one time we was over at Sandrock and we was interrupting the PA system. And of course, at Sandrock, they always played country music. And always the guy hollered at me, he goes, "Hey, you're killing me up here." I said, "Don't worry, you're killing me with your music." So we're all even.
All right, we're gonna. Phil, you want to try to switch over to your computer? I can. Here, I'll bring you back on the computer. I didn't mean to do that. Here we go. Phil Harris, welcome back. Are you on the computer now?
I'm on the computer now.
You sound a lot better. Here we go. Phil, one of the special memories, and then we'll go on over to some more updated stuff. Do you remember? And it's still one of my favorite memories ever. Doing the games at the BJCC and the state finals, and one day we did Fife. That was Coach Powell's team. We did Valley Head the same day. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, I remember it very well. That's when Valley Head got to the finals and got beat on a freshman hit a 3-point shot to beat them. And their basketball coach now is played on that team, and so it was heartbreaking for those kids, and but it was huge win on the other side, and of course Fife won the state championship that year, and boy, that was a lot of fun calling that final game.
That was. It's one of the. I believe that's Coach Best that's at Valley Head now.
Yeah. Jamie Best. It was Jamie Blaylock at the time.
Yeah. All right, then, Howie. How about you? What's your favorite broadcast with Phil over the years?
Oh man, I know this is cliche, but there's been so many that we've done together. It's hard to pick one because it's always entertaining every time. Because we've called football games anywhere from Crossville, Alabama, to Addison, Alabama, and basketball anywhere from we tried to North. We wasn't able to, but from North Sun Mountain down to Jacksonville. It's always fun getting together with Phil and doing the games, because to me, you always learn something new every time you got with them.
Well, it was fun, where I remember how it's a lot of the games we did at the Civic Center, especially during the county tournament, because because the DeKalb County basketball tournament, boys and girls, is always great. The girls is so competitive every year.
Yeah, I remember that being. I remember that being something special. Phil, at one point though, you left FPA and you went to Key Country, and I went with you. And for a couple of years, I went to North Jackson, but you went to Scottsboro, and you really found a home in Scottsboro.
Yeah, I became the voice of the Scottsboro Wildcats, and that was enjoyable. I loved it. There's such a following. It's just like Sand Mountain, just such a following for high school football at Scottsboro. I really enjoyed my time over there. Learned a great deal. Ron just kind of handed it over to me, let me do my thing, and that's what I've been grateful for. A lot of the people I've worked for have just let me be myself and let me do my thing. And that's what's made it enjoyable. So I said, well, I just do what I know to do. And but it was a great deal of fun doing Scottsboro games. I hated to walk away from it, but it was time for me to move on.
I'm now 55 and still doing live football. I think people, that Friday night grind, sometimes you get off work, jump in the car, go 3 or 4 hours away, call a game, jump back in the car, do a post-game show. You're home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And if you're like us, you may take off to Tuscaloosa or Auburn or Knoxville. It wears on you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you are exactly right. It definitely wears on you. But during the broadcast, though, you forget about all that. I mean, it is a nuisance to get there if you've got technical problems. But while you're there, I mean, there's nothing better. The pageantry, the kids playing, the atmosphere. I mean, there's just nothing like it. And everybody say, well, I can tell more about watching it on TV. It's not the same. When you go to games live, it's a whole lot different. And the best part of it is the people watch, and things that happen during the game that's entertaining. That's what makes it worthwhile to go, because there's always something going on.
So you came up a couple of years ago, and I'm getting some feedback. It may be on my end. And you did a few series of South Pittsburgh, Sequatchie County with Michael Smith. What was it like after all those years of doing on the QSB scoreboard show to sit back down and do that play-by-play?
Well, it was entertaining. It's different. I mean, when you jump back in the saddle again, you just kind of like riding a bicycle, and that's what we were talking about, maybe doing basketball again, because, I just enjoy that. When you jump in back that saddle, of course, you have to get your mind set and your mind trained once again, but, you don't forget that, and you don't forget that inner feeling you get from doing those broadcasts, because the biggest thing you're doing is you're trying to make the kids, you want to put the kids on a pedestal. And anytime you can entertain them, the parents, talk about the community, that's what makes everything worthwhile, because that's what people latch on to.
Howie, Chaney, what's your question?
Yeah, I remember one night Phil was the voice of Scottsboro Wildcat. When I wasn't helping, I would listen to Phil's broadcast every Friday night. And there was one night in particular, I remember I was piddling on the computer. Scottsboro was playing somebody, and Scottsboro got the opening kickoff, and they kept the ball the whole first quarter, like a minute into the second quarter. And I texted Phil, and I said, Phil, I've never seen anything like that. And I don't think he realized what he was doing. And they came out of commercial break. He's like, well, Howie Chaney, I've never seen nothing like that either. It was something amazing. I'm glad to be here in person to see it. And I'm sure people's like, who in the heck is Howie Chaney? So
Yeah.
never seen a team do that before on any level. Just keep it for a whole quarter and then like 2 minutes of the next.
And that's execution basically. And of course, a lot of times Scottsboro, that was their game plan, was to milk that clock. Now, they come up with big plays a lot of time, but at that time they wanted to control the football. And so, you don't see drives like that very often, because kids a lot of times will make mistakes. It's hard to put together a drive like that.
Phil, and I know you didn't have many bad years, but 2 years ago I suffered through a 2-8 season. There's nothing worse than a season that goes sideways either and calling a game. What's your worst memory at being at a game and being like, oh, I would give anything to be somewhere else other than here? Mine 2-8 Sequatchie County versus 2-7 Alvin C. York. If somebody would have shot me on the air, I'd have been thankful.
Well, I don't actually remember that, because a lot of times I just make the best of the worst situation, because I don't really have any bad memories of really bad seasons like that. I know we had a couple, but they really don't stand out. But the biggest thing that I got to do was I got to do other games besides Scottsboro, like we go do Pisgah and people like that. So really a lot of times I was on the neutral side. And doing a lot of games. I know one year Pisgah got to the state championship game, and the guy I played football with, he was the quarterback at Valley Head. He was the coach at Pisgah, so I got to call his championship game, and my coach, Jim Kirby, got to do the color with me. Now, Pisgah didn't win it, but that was great. He helped me do the last 3 games of the playoffs that year, and golly, it was a load of fun. And but I never really dwell on anything like that, because you're going to have years where it's 2-8. You just got to try to make the best of it, because these kids that go out there, they have a 2-8 season, and it's hard to say a lot of good things, but those kids that get up every day, go to practice, knowing that on Friday night it's going to be tough and probably going to get beat. Those kids are winners. They're not losers. I mean, they give it all they had, because on Monday they show right back up, and that's what you have to do when it comes to work. No matter how bad it is, you got to show up for work on Monday.
Howie Chaney.
I remember me and Phil did a lot of football games together as well. We would a lot of times we'd go and do a Fort Payne game. I remember one time in particular we went over to Milton Frank Stadium, I think it was in Huntsville, and we did Fort Payne and somebody, and Fort Payne was getting kicked to, or yeah, they were receiving the ball, and right before the play, I told Phil, "Watch out, Fort Payne could return this for a touchdown." Sure enough, they did, and since they returned it, Phil looked at me and like, "How in the world do you know that?" I don't know.
Hey, sometimes it just hits you. Who knows why that happens, but it'll all of a sudden something like what you're talking about will hit you. And and the biggest thing I loved about going over to Huntsville, it was a long ride. Their bands were always so great when you went over there.
Yeah, it was. It halftime show, and the fact that schools shared a stadium, that even made it better because it didn't really seem like anybody had a home field advantage over there either.
Yeah, especially at the old stadium downtown, Goldsmith Shipman. It was like a Civil War fort. Oh yeah, that was just definitely a neutral field. A lot of times your road team, Scottsboro, Fort Payne, whoever we'd go with, would have more fans than the home team had.
Yeah, regardless of their Fort Payne, Scottsboro, they didn't like the visit. They didn't like the visit that came up into the press box either. They all had a hard time.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely so. Yeah, that was a definitely tough when it came to that. And I remember the old Goldsmith Shipman Stadium. I don't know if you ever did a broadcast there with me, but it shook. That press box shook the whole game. And I was just waiting for it just to fall and hit the ground. Of course, they've condemned that now and they don't use it anymore. But that place was a little bit scary at the time.
I remember one time Crossville did it, and they didn't room the press box for it. Let them know that we was coming in advance, so we had to sit out in the stands with to do that cross. How often did that happen, or something like that? Miscommunication. They didn't realize he was coming and didn't have a press box.
Yeah, because But the thing was, we got put outside in that Crossville Plainview game, and the thing was, is I was very surprised because I didn't think Plainview could beat Crossville that night, but boy, it was fun sitting out in that stands, and Crossville's fans sit down around us, and we didn't have no problem seeing anything because Plainview pretty much dominated that game, so we didn't catch no heckling or nothing from anybody because Plainview played very well that night and beat Crossville at Crossville. Yeah, and really and truly, to me, I think they could have squeezed us in there.
Yeah.
But sometimes things like that happen.
Well, let me ask you this: bad press box. What is the worst box you ever had?
That would be Goldsmith Shipman. I mean, that place shook the whole time, and it was so low you could hardly see the field. You was almost sitting down into the stands, basically. Yeah, that press box was not very good. Everywhere else I went was adequate. Of course, like down here at Valley Head, when I done games there, it is so cramped and small. You don't have much of an area. They'll give you a space down there, but there's just not much to it, and people are right on top of you. And that makes it hard is when you're picking up feed from out in the crowd. It's nice to be able to be away from the crowd, but those kind of things are going to happen.
I know the best one that you ever did. That's when we went to Addison, and they had like a double wide trailer setting up above the bleachers there, and it's like 2 stories, and we had our own little room there that was heated, and here it is, play season, it's cold outside, and here we are, nice and toasty. I think your exact words were, "I won't carry this with me everywhere we go." There's nothing.
Yeah, well, the thing over the people over at Addison, they were super nice too.
Yeah.
I mean, they were great folks. They were real cordial. Yeah, they made it as convenient for us as they possibly could. And I appreciated that. I loved going over. I think I went over there 2 different times and really enjoyed the trip because the people there were great.
Right.
I want to see if our echo got any better. How's that sound to everybody? Can you hear me?
I don't hear any echo. I mean, is my voice okay?
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all are fine. We had an echo behind it. And I heard some of your conversation a minute ago about good places and bad places. Phil, I remember, I wanted to ask you if you remember the old press box at Sylvania. That was not one of my favorites back in the day. Coach Benefield's team, when he was at Sylvania, it could get rocking. I remember the wind was blowing one night, and I was getting a little scared up there. Press
Yeah.
box was giving and going a little bit.
Yeah, so Sylvania was a great. I mean, they were real good when Coach Benefield was there. We did a lot of the broadcast. Yeah, it wasn't very convenient, and also it was cold in that press box too on those Friday night football nights. But you just make the best of a situation. I know I've heard of times where people's had to sit on top of press boxes at times. I never had to do that. Now, I don't know if I would have liked that too well, but you just have to do what you can do and make the best of it.
Over at East Ridge, you sit on top of the press box, and I'm too big to be climbing up on the press box. Phil, now we would be remiss if we didn't talk about what you're doing now with WQSB. Of course, you and Jeff Allen are together. That's really kind of unique what y'all do with every score in the state comes through the station.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff does a great job. He spends a lot of time researching and kind of sets the stage for the show. And he allows me to ask a lot of different questions, bring in things. And that's what I kind of do, is listen to radio broadcasts. And I know a lot of the coaches around, a lot of the people around. That adds to the show. But yeah, it's very unique. It's been on the air about 30 some odd years, 31, 32 years. This coming year will be my 16th year. And there's just nothing like it. I mean, I have to drive an hour and 15 minutes to Albertville on Friday nights, but that 3 hours, I really enjoy it because we get to, bring the communities up, make the coaches feel good about their kids. They're always telling us how they appreciate how we talk positive about everybody. And that's what we want to do more than anything else. Yeah, we want to tell scores, but we want to make things positive because these kids are put on a pedestal for a short time. And when they finish high school, a lot of times that's the only thing they've ever had. So you want them to be special at that time. And I think us sticking to what we know, high school football only. Every once in a while, we'll mention something else, a college thing, but basically, it's high school football night and it's community night, and it's a unique show, but it has worked, and we keep it simple. But Jeff does a great job in prepping for the show, and it's just a lot of fun. I have enjoyed my time there. If that's all I ever do in radio, I'm happy because I enjoy that Friday night football.
Where do you get scores from?
Well, they come from texts from different people. We go on the internet. We get scores from ScoreStream. There's just so many. We've got so many contact people. They constantly send us scores. As soon as somebody scores, they're sending us. I've got a little area of people I know. They send me text messages, and sometimes they'll send me, like, uh, a touchdown pass, some crazy something happens in a game, and they'll let me know. But we have so many different avenues, and it all works well. And a lot of times, I know the TV station over in a couple of the TV stations in Huntsville monitor our broadcast to get scores.
I know a radio station in Dunlap that gets its North Jackson scores from you, but we'll not mention that name because we give North Jackson scores every now and then. So I might know a station that's stealing something from you too, but that's near and there. Howie, what do you find about? And I'll tell you, Phil, what I find I really like, and I do listen to the show a lot of times on our way home. Now there's internets, listen live. I can listen anywhere we're at. Y'all are an hour later than us getting off the air, so I can get on and I hear it. But it's traditional football. It's not a lot of y'all are not doing a lot of, hey, eat a biscuit at Hardee's. I mean, you got your sponsors and stuff, but it's really about the football.
Yeah, it's about football. It's about the kids. We love to have the coaches on and interview with us, and I try to challenge them with questions, not ask them the same old things, because just different things. 'Cause it's interesting. to find out, Coach, when do you back off during the season and not do as much of the work? How long do you practice? Because the coaches will tell you, they'll be honest with you, especially if you ask them a challenging question and, and you don't have a hidden agenda there to try to find out any, secret information, because they love to share what they do, and they love praising the kids, and we give them that opportunity.
Howie, follow up.
So, you left the voice of being the Scottsboro Wildcats and went to QSB. Could you kind of tell what happened or how that came about?
Well, I just felt like I had done about all I could do there. I love the football part of it, but I just got to the point where I wasn't really enjoying it anymore, and I'm wondering if I want to keep doing this or not. So I thought, yeah, it's time. It's during basketball season. I thought, yeah, it's time. I'm finished. So I told him I wasn't going to do it anymore, and Ron still tried to want me to do basketball, and Campbell Smith at the time, he's passed on now, but he was a great inspiration. I loved Campbell. He was a great man. But he told Ron, he said, let Phil alone. It's time for him to move on to better things. And the very next week after it was found out that I had left the radio station, Jeff called me and asked me if I'd be interested to give it a try to see how I liked it. And I said, well, yeah, I'll try it. We'll see what happens. And, I was hooked, and I've enjoyed that ever since. It just kind of sort of just came around at the right place at the right time. Jeff needed somebody real bad. He got to a point to where he was like having one person one year, then one person another year, then one person. And he wanted stability because he's the kind of person, he likes things to go in a flow. So that way, if I'm there, he don't have to worry about a lot of things, just making sure he does his part because he knows I'm going to take care of mine.
That's a relationship with Jeff that's been 15 years now.
It could be 16 years this fall.
Wow. That outside of your poor wife, Jeff put up with you a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've learned a great deal from him. I think he's learned some from me too, but what I've learned from him is professionalism. And that's what the biggest thing is. The number one thing in radio is be professional. And that's the biggest thing I think he's taught me.
Yeah. I can't say I'm the best at that. So let's move on. That's Randy being Randy. You got to be who you are too.
Yeah, definitely. My personality will come out every once in a while. So.
Oh yeah. I've been there. All right. We're going to go to your story here in just in a second. There's a couple. I want to ask both of you. I want to get your answers real fast. A couple rapid fire questions. What game do you remember the most? And I'll start with mine. I think to this day, I remember Colbert County, Sylvania. I think it was state quarterfinals. Steve Stanley playing quarterback for Colbert County. Went on later to play at Alabama. I'll give you that as the one football game that to this day, I still think about. Howie?
Probably it would be a basketball. Going back to talking about Campbell there for a second. We were in a station break and we were listening to the commercials. And about that time, Campbell was working for the radio station, did a commercial, and then we looked down on the floor and he's out there refereeing the ball game as well. And me and Phil just kind of looked at each other like, wow, how cool that, with him refereeing the ball, he's doing a commercial for on the radio.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Phil?
I got two. One football, one basketball. And how you probably read that article you were relating to. That was when Ider played at Plainview, and it was the last time I think Ider beat Plainview, was when Brent Tinker was his senior year. And in that game against Plainview, it was a great game. And in the fourth quarter, Brent Tinker just kind of took over that game. And it was the most amazing performance in the fourth quarter I've ever seen. I think they beat Plainview maybe 20-14, but he just took he just put that team on his shoulders. And I just remember it was just a great effort. And Coach Tinker was a great effort football player, and his kids that play for him give great effort too. The basketball game I remember was down at Jacksonville in the finals of the region tournament, Geraldine against Fife. And Geraldine was leading by 2 points, and Fife hit a half-court shot, and won the region title by 1. And I remember Coach Cochran asking me, he said, Phil, what did you say when that happened? I said, Coach, I do not remember. I could not tell you. I said, it's just one of those things. I said, I don't know. But that was a memorable moment because that was unreal because Coach Cochran come running down the court and just going nuts. So when he ran right across in front of me, and it was a big thrill. I'll always remember that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with player now. The one I always remember, he a future Vol, was a great high school running back, played linebacker at Tennessee, and that'd be Eddie Moore. Also, I'd give an honorable mention to Steve Stanley from Colbert County as a veer quarterback that ended up being a linebacker at Alabama. Is the two players that always stands out to me that individually. Howie, anybody for you?
There's quite a few that I remember. One of them that I think y'all called, I wasn't calling, but I was in high school, was seeing Brian Steger for Buckhorn against Sylvania, and he basically beats by himself. It's like
He was pretty good.
every time he touched the ball is a touchdown. I think y'all called that game. Not real sure about that, but as far as games that me and Bill's done together, or all three of us, man, there've been a lot of great players in the area. I really can't name just one.
Yeah. Well, I can give you one that I saw, and I saw him 2 or 3 times, and that was Carnell Williams from Etowah County before he went to Auburn. He was a great high school football player. And to me, when I watched him play, he was a better defensive back than he was running back. Of course, what made him a great running back, he was all arms and legs, and you couldn't tackle him. You couldn't get a lick on him. You had to pull him down. But at defensive back, we run the veer, and run the option. And we would get plays on the corner. And this was Corey Wellington when he played at Scottsboro. He could fly. And every time we get out and open, looked like we was fixing to break about an 80-yard play, the pitch would go out there to Wellington. There wouldn't be nobody nowhere. And Carnell Williams would come up from safety and cut his legs down from him. I bet he did that 3 different times. Now, you could burn him every once in a while on a pass play, but on a run play, he was going to stick you. And so, but they gave him that freedom. I mean, they gave up the deep pass for him to stop the running game, and he could do it by himself.
And it's crazy, Phil. It's easy to come up with the Eddie Moores and the Carnell Williams, but I run through my head how many kids didn't play at the next level that was just so good at that high school level that they stay with you for years and years and years.
Yeah, well, too, Brent Tinker that we talked about at Ider, and then you got the Anderson boys at Sylvania, just super great high school football players. And one that stands out to me, I remember at Sylvania at the time when the Anderson boys played, was old Mike Smith. So he was a heck of a defensive football player. And then you had Coach Graham that played at Sylvania. He was a great high school football player. Of course, he went on and played at UNA. But I mean, I've seen many players. They were just great, outstanding high school football players.
And of course, we both saw Kenny Smith at North Jackson was kind of a legend at the time. And I believe you saw the what was the linebacker that went to Alabama from North Jackson? Carlton. What was that, Howie?
Was it Tanae Patrick?
Yeah,
it was him. Yeah, he was good. He was a great high school football player. It didn't work out for him in college, but in high school, he was a one-man wrecking crew. He was a one-man wrecking crew.
I saw him play basketball, and he was a great basketball player as well.
Yeah, he was a good tight end.
Yeah. It's incredible. Phil, Howie, we want to switch just a little bit and talk about some things that's happened to you in the last few years, Phil. And it would be a lie not to tell everybody if you can't tell. Phil, Howie, and I still maintain a friendship, very close. You recently, let's start with the bad. You recently, kind of out of the blue, had suffered with diabetes for years and medical problems, but your liver just kind of quit working on you, and you had to have a transplant down at UAB. Tell us how all that came about.
Well, I've never really any complications out of the diabetes. I've been able to control it. I've had it for about 20 years. But my liver, they found out, was bad. And of course, that goes in line. It goes together. A lot of people says that my liver went bad before I got diabetes, but you just didn't know it at the time. But eventually, my liver numbers started going up. Then I had a real bad, and of course, I was diagnosed with that non-alcohol cirrhosis of the liver. And so I had battled that for about 5 or 6 years. Well, then I had a wreck and totaled my truck, was out for 3 months, I had a compressed fracture in my back, broke 3 ribs. So I was out then. But when I came back, my liver laid down on me and went bad. My ammonia level shot up, and had a real bad spell. And Chrissy can tell you how bad that spell was. I was mean that night. But they got me to the hospital, got my ammonia level down. So the next day, I just happened to have a appointment in Birmingham with my liver doctor, and he shut me down. And he said, "Phil, this is it." He goes, "You're done." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're going to have a liver transplant." And I said, "Well, and I thought, well, I can go back to work for a while." "No, you're finished." He said, "You're going to have a liver transplant." So I went through that, all, everything to go with that, got put on the waiting list. They ended up finding cancer in my liver. They dealt with that, and that all came out good. And because they had to if you get cancer in your liver, if your tumors gets too big, they can't transplant. So they have to keep a watch on anything inside your liver, because a lot of people, I don't know if they know or don't know, I'm sure people's had health issues. If cancer ever gets in the ducts in your liver, it starts spreading all over your whole body. Well, they were able to control it. So then I had a transplant. And I went through about 1.5 years where I was out of work. Now, it's 2 years ago I had my transplant, and I'm back. I'm doing well. My mind I was really fighting it. I didn't realize how sick I was. And now that I've gotten back and got to feeling better, I'm a lot sharper, and I can tell the difference. Now, I couldn't tell it then, but I can tell you one thing. When people go through transplant, and all that stuff, I'm thankful to God for getting a second chance, because a lot of people don't get a second chance. They go in, find out they've got cancer, and then things just kind of fall apart on them. You have to keep a positive attitude. And that's one great thing about UAB Hospital. They kept me in a positive frame of mind. And that's a lot to do with that. And because you go through, it's just unreal what you go through. But you learn to enjoy every day. You thank God for every extra moment you get. And then you're able to pass this along to other people, how fragile life is. And until you go through something like that, it's kind of like the best testimony, like preacher, comes from a guy who was an alcoholic. He's been to the bottom. He knows what it's all about. So when you live through something like that, you can share your stories. And a lot of times it's very beneficial to other people. And that's what I enjoy. I enjoy telling my story. I'm not a kind of person that likes to be the focal point, but I enjoy sharing the stories of everything I've experienced over the years.
And Phil, we knew you were struggling with your liver, and Howie, I almost hate telling this story, but I'm going to tell it. Phil calls me, or maybe Chrissy. Yeah, Chrissy had texted me and said, they told Phil he's got to have a liver transplant. Just stay upbeat. And she had told me that, Phil, between me and her. And then you called me later. Howie, all Phil and I talked about was how if he got his liver pretty fast, we wouldn't have to miss another football season. He could be back by Tennessee football season. And looking back, Phil, it seems silly, but you didn't need me to be anything but just Randall at that point, and treat you the same. And I think sometimes that's an important part of you getting better, is your people that love you and support you love on you, but they still treat you the same. And I know I went through my health scare, and I appreciated people that would treat me the same.
Oh yeah, and that's important. And the biggest thing is just when people has issues, just be positive, keep in a positive frame of mind, because a lot of times your mental state, your mental health is probably as much or more important than your physical health. Your mental health can send you in a downward spiral. So you got to be positive. So everybody that can be the same around you and don't treat you like there's something wrong with you, you appreciate that, because you're trying to focus on getting better. You don't need to be reminded of the gloom and doom.
And Phil, you said it yourself, and Howie, you had gotten to where it was affecting your everyday speech, memory, but you didn't perceive that at the time, did you?
No, I just tried to fight through it. People would ask if I was something wrong with me. I said, no, I'm fine. And I'd go through real cloudy, off and on. One of the guys told me, and I don't remember this, said that they got to the gate where I go in and punch my number in to go in the gate, and said I had fallen asleep in my truck sitting there at the gate, so they knew something was wrong with me. And I had spells like that and didn't really realize it, how sick I really was.
Yeah. Howie, you got to follow up?
Yeah, I remember when Phil contacted me and told me about it. He was like, hey, I'm going to have a transplant. Here's what's happened. He said, now treat me normal. And I said, Phil, why is there so much air in potato chip bags? We want more chips. Help us out.
Yeah.
He said, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah. Hey, I've come up with an answer for that now. It's so that they can put enough air in there to keep the chips fresh. How's that sound?
That sounds good. Phil, I want you to talk just a minute about, and I came down to visit you when you were back in the hotel and you kind of had to stay close to the transplant. But the folks at UAB, we are lucky in this region to have a place like UAB. I guess it's Vandy and UAB, but
yeah,
we're real lucky to have a place like UAB close to us.
UAB is a huge, enormous hospital. That place has just gotten just huge down there, and they're very professional, keep you in a positive frame of mind. Of course, bottom line is to make money, no doubt about it. But the biggest thing is they want you to stay positive. Like when they was telling me about the tumors in my liver, they never mentioned the cancer word. So we never dwelled on anything like that. It says, we're going to take care of this. You've got lesions in your liver. We're going to do this and this. And they never talked about cancer. They didn't give me any opportunity to feel sorry for myself or get in a negative frame of mind. They always kept me positive, and that means a whole lot. And of course, I still have to go back down there every so often. The people down there are just great.
And at the same time you're going through this, a testimony to not you, but the will of God. You were in the middle, in your 50s, of getting a college degree, and it still, that's a message that I talked to my daughter about, who thinks Phil's her uncle. I can't even explain he's not. She thinks Phil's my brother. It was important for you to get your education too.
Yeah, and kind of the thing we were talking about too, when my health went bad, I was very blessed that I got a liver. It was a 33-year-old man who was an organ donor, and I got my liver from him. And I asked God several times. I said, God, I'm 53. My heart is great. How come you couldn't make something happen to me and give him my heart instead of me having to take his liver and him die at the age of 33? I'm 50. I was 53 at the time. That just don't kind of seem fair. And the only answer I would get was, your work's not done here. So, and that's all you can say. He didn't tell me anything else. That's just basically what he put on my heart. And what you was talking about, the education, that was always on my bucket list, was to finish college. So I had been going off and on. Then I went through the liver problems, and so I started concentrating on school more. And then after I had my transplant, I really buckled down and finally finished and graduated with honors, and finally got my communications degree. And even if I never do anything with it, it's something that they can't take away from you. It's something I earned. I wanted to finish with a college degree, and I finally did it. And that's one of those things I kind of pat myself on the back for. I don't do that very often, but that one. And of course, if it wasn't for my wife, Chrissy, she helped me get through all that, because I struggled and I struggled and I struggled mentally. But she kept me positive, and so we were able to work through it. Without her, I could have never got it done.
Well, I made fun of you for being in college 30-something years. So I think I did my fault, because I thought I took a long time, but you might have broke records. I think Randy Moss would have graduated as long as you were there.
So that's the thing. And you think about it, it's a long time, because I started college in 1985 at Northeast, and I finished in 2021. So And I went off and on. I probably went enough years to go 6 years because I kept changing majors and having to go back and take courses. But it's behind me now. I got it done, and I was glad to finally finish.
Are you sure you're not a doctor or specialist after going that?
Yeah, well, veterinarian or something. Yeah, as long as I went, yeah, I feel
My
like
dad,
it sometimes.
my dad told him that people were graduating when I did. He said Randy got a college degree, that they were graduating doctors and lawyers that started with Randy. So,
Yeah.
Phil, one of the things that going through your journey and your wife, I got it not only to you, we call her the football mother because she takes care of me, our friend Andrew Howard. She has her hands full every Saturday. But one of the first things after you got well and or had your liver and started talking to me and texting you were okay, I went
Yeah.
and it was a personal decision for me, and I made myself a donor. How there's no talking about how important that liver is to your life, but it's a personal decision for anyone that really needs to think about it. If you're on the line, you can change somebody's life by being a organ donor.
Yeah, I think and one person can change up to 8 lives because you've got all the organs, and put the kidney and heart and liver, and they can take skin. I mean, they can take your eyes. There's so many things that you can donate that will make everybody else's life better. And because there's tons of people on waiting lists, and there's a lot of politics involved. You have to wait your time, but everybody needs to be an organ donor. It is so important. And when you finally get to be around somebody who was able to get an organ, a donation, and it propels their life, because who's to say if I didn't get that organ donation when I got it, I might not be here today. Because basically my liver, when your liver goes bad, it's eating itself. It's eating every bit of protein it can get. You have to keep feeding it protein, but it's eating your muscle tone, any kind of protein in your body, it's doing away with. And because it's trying to survive, it's the only thing it knows to do. So yeah, I encourage people to be organ donors. They should be, because you never know what's going to happen. It's not morbid. It's not anything bad. I'm still an organ donor. I've been an organ donor since I got my driver's license. I just thought, well, I'm just going to do this because you never know what might happen. And you don't never know who you might help. I know a guy that's from out of Ider. He graduated from Ider when I went to school about a head. Well, he had an accident at work and had head trauma, and he ended up donating. His family donated all his organs when they decided that his life was not going to go on. And there's no telling how many people he benefited by being an organ donor. So that way you do leave at least a legacy. And Birmingham is the legacy of hope, and that's what being an organ donor is. Because if something happens to me today, there might be something they can use. I don't know. If I won't be able to use my heart, it's probably about turned to stone by now. So, but
It's
other than
being a
that, I
Tennessee
think
fan. It's black.
yeah,
It's been broken so many times. It's black.
yeah.
Phil, if someone wants to reach out to you and get you, they can contact you and talk about this, and it's something you look forward to doing or be willing to do is
Yeah,
talk to kids a little more.
yeah, I've kind of talked about doing that right now. My job has kept me so busy, but I want to kind of step away from that. And I'd like to do things like that, because I enjoy public speaking. I enjoy talking to kids. I know when we went to Woodville one time, Jeff gave a speech to the kids when they were team of the week. And then I said, Jeff, let me say something here. So I spoke to the kids, and Jeff said, man, you need to do that more often. He goes, they were tuned in to every word you had to say. And that, and that kind of sticks with me. And who's to say, a motivational speaker. I had one guy tell me, he goes, well, you ought to be a motivational speaker. And I said, well, I'm kind of sort of leery of that. And I said, all this transplant things I went through in my testimony, it's very emotional. I deal with it a lot better now. But if I sit down and tell you my whole story, it's very emotional because I went through some trying times, but I would go through it again because I guess you could say, the old footprints in the sand story you hear, in pictures and whatnot. I learned then to walk with God rather than let him carry me. All the times before, I let him carry me, and I didn't realize I was doing that. Now I walk with him, and he shows me things, and it's amazing if you watch, what you can learn by walking with God instead of letting him carry you all the time.
That is an awesome testimony. Howie, I'm going to tell you what a good guy Phil Harris is. He once bailed me out from a public drunkenness charge when I was stone cold sober, and the charge was changed to inciting a riot. That's a good man right there.
Oh, yeah, inciting a riot would probably get you 20 years today, though. You know how it is, the way it's going.
If Democrat was in the office, I'd still be in jail.
Yeah. Yeah, you might be. But that night you was talking about that, and after we got you out of jail, it took us to after midnight. I had to drive all the way home, go out to my bin at Rainsville, and do my paperwork because I had to leave real quick and I didn't get my daily done. And it was like 4:00 in the morning. After I got home here, I had to drive to Rainsville and finish that up. So that turned out to being a long, long night. But I'm glad it worked out well for you because, man, you got railroaded that night, and it was not fair. The guy that started it all, when he saw the cops coming, took out. He left, and God, it was so frustrating. But he got his somewhere along
to run. That was my biggest problem. I'm too dumb. Real fast, we want to go through a couple of things, and we're a little past time, but let's take next. I want to do some rapid fire with you. And Howie, you're going to have to ask him his question about does he have any game day traditions? Go ahead, sir.
I can't do it. You already done it just now.
No, you got it.
But I do have a question, though. I did learn
something.
All right. I didn't realize that you had to have driver's license to drive a horse and buggy back in the day.
Yeah, I guess maybe I may be stretching the truth just a little bit, but whenever it came to where you operated a car, I put I was an organ donor from then. So, I may have how you exaggerate stories just a little bit.
It took me a minute to catch that one up. Go ahead, Hal. You got any more for him?
Me and Phil's known each other for many, many years. We've done a lot of games and everything. And I knew that we was friends, but I didn't realize until he sent me a text about 2 years ago and said, "Hey, man, I'm on my way to Birmingham to get a new liver." I'm like, that's not something that you just send to everybody. You just send that to your, what you feel like is your closest friends. And I tell you what, man, that meant a lot to me. That made me realize how close you felt like that we were. And I thank you for that, man.
Yeah, and I am. I have a lot of close friends. And my wife, my brother tell me all the time, said, "Phil, you have a lot of close friends around you." And I said, "Well, I mean, I just, I enjoy the relationship with people. That's my biggest thing. I enjoy building relationships, and that's what I like more than anything. That's like my job at Frito-Lay. The relationships I build is what makes it worthwhile, and the friendships I've had over the years, it makes it a lot of fun, and especially when you get back in touch with people and kind of hang out, it just makes life enjoyable. Sitting at home on a text and, these kids will get inside and not socialize very much. They don't know what they're missing because being a social person is what it's all about. It keeps you healthy. It keeps you thriving, and it keeps you goal oriented.
It's a lot easier to be Phil's friend than it is mine. I'm a handful.
Yeah. Well, I make it hard on you, though, as much as I can.
You do. You do. All those people think Phil Harris is a nice guy. You ought to come walk in my shoes because I don't ever get any slack. None. And I wouldn't have it any other way, but I get none.
Yeah, I'm not going to let Randy feel sorry for himself. That's for sure.
No, because that's the worst thing I can do. I'll get my pity party. I'll start a pity party and I'll get a text from Phil that says, "Get your ass up and go do something. Quit feeling sorry for yourself." And I'll be like, "Okay, I'll go do it." So now, Phil, let's give a shout out. And you're one other thing, and it's an important person to me. Your mom took me I lost my mom a few years ago and my dad in a matter of a few months. Your mom, of course, owns Miracle Pottery there in Valley Head. Your mom has a wonderful business that we should plug a little bit. She makes beautiful pottery.
Yeah, she has built up a good reputation over the years. She's been very much into the community when she can. She wants me to take the business over, and who knows, I might one of these days. I get up there and help a lot, do a lot of the glazing. Me and Chrissy both does. So, a lot of the pottery. I don't make pottery. I don't like that part of it, but I do help out all I can. And but yeah, over the years she's done well. Of course, she reached out to you. She's reached out to a lot of people over the years. She has a good heart most of the time. She has a good heart most of the time. Everybody's not perfect, but I have to get on to her sometimes. But overall, she means well. She's a good business person. And for somebody to be doing that for 30 years, and she's been very successful at it, and she just keeps going on and on and on. And I enjoy it. I enjoy all that because it's unreal the people that comes and buys pottery up here.
She's always been great to me, and we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Phil's brother, stick figure, Spencer Harris, the man I've spent more time in my life looking for at events. Howie, Phil's brother, Spencer, can be with you, and he'll be walking beside you, and there'll be a crowd. And the next thing you know, he's calling you from 7 miles away, wanting you to come pick him up, and you don't know where he's at. And it ain't like it's happened once; it's happened multiple times.
Yeah, he can't tell you where he is.
Atlanta, Spencer's Lawn Care. He just, God bless you, brother. You're Waldo on me, though. I lose you more than anybody.
Well, see, that's the thing is, Howie, just to tell you the way it would be, if he was on here with us, you'd have his picture there. When it got picture taking time, he would disappear and there'd be a stick person there.
Yeah, I did.
Something would happen and he would not be there for the group picture.
I draw
so you have to draw him in. You have to draw him in.
I've been around him one time. We went to a Braves game together, me and Randy and Spencer and all that. And he's like, hey, let's go across the street to the Waffle House and eat. And we're like, okay, we'll go get our car and we'll meet you there. We didn't realize there's 3 Waffle Houses around Truist Park at the time. And we drove to every one of them before he told us which one he was at. We at the Waffle House across the road. We went to 3 different ones before we found him.
And you can imagine the words that was coming out of my mouth about the second Waffle House. I was like, blah, 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 Spencer, I can't remember. So Spencer, Phil's brother. So, yeah. All right, guys. Well, the time is running out. Phil, will you come back and do this with us again? Because we didn't get to talk, and I wanted to talk about your 85 journey to a state title. And there's some other things we want to get into, but and of course, Coach Kirby was so much of a part of your life. Will you come back again and let's do part 2 at some point?
Yeah, I'm sure I'll have a story or 2 to tell, and yeah, we can talk about the state championship year because that was a lot of fun. Got a lot of stories around that. Yeah, I'm full of stories, that's for sure. You don't have to worry about that. You just have to pick one out and ask me, and I'll tell you what you want to know.
Too many of those stories start with, I was with Randy and he was doing XXX. And then we looked around and Spencer was gone and Randy was in handcuffs. And that's another day, though.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. For Phil Harris, for Howie Chaney, you got anything? Either one of y'all got anything you want to shout out before we get off here?
Yeah. Hey, Phil, do you have any superstitions that you do before the show comes on?
No, not really. No, the biggest thing I do is I like to listen to other games before I get there. It kind of sort of gives me a moment to kind of settle in and concentrate and kind of sort of start the mind process of asking questions and telling things that goes on. That's kind of my ritual every week. And I do that on the way to the radio station every Friday night.
Randy makes fun of the get every time he's there.
Hey, we could have someone that just won the Masters, and Howie's best question would be, well, when you got to the 18th green, what tradition did you follow?
Yeah. Say, I putted the ball.
I putted the ball and I hugged my wife.
Yeah.
For Phil Harris, for Howie Chaney, for Randall Cunningham, shout out to Chrissy Harris for doing all the work to hook this up. This is Off the Record, and we'll see you next Thursday.